So next pose we did was dangle pose. And so dangle pose is a slight variation for the way that I teach it. And it's just because realistically the main focus is the backs of the legs. And so that's what we're really trying to get into. And so in that way, we don't need to fold forward. And what I find realistically is that if I'm going to be worried about an alignment of the spine more so than anything else, it's actually usually flexion of the spine rather than extension. If I teach people to come into a backward bend properly, then it's not going to be as bad as holding a flexion because there's in the extension, so the backward bend, when the spinous processes hit each other, then that is as far as you can go. So bones pressing into bone, you can't go any further, you can't stretch beyond that. But with flexion, we don't necessarily have that bone on bone to stop us. And so what will happen is that as the spine is flexing, if this is the front of the spine and this is the back of the spine, the intervertebral disc is going to start to get squished and it's going to be pushed posteriorly. And obviously there's very solid connective tissue that surrounds that. But if you have any kind of inflammation and that's going to be pushed posteriorly, then that could inflame it even more. So if there's anything that I'm more concerned about, it's probably more about spinal flexions rather than spinal extensions. And so this is one of those poses where you just kind of drop forward and allow yourself to come forward, and you're not actually distributing that sensation along your whole spine. You're just loading it up down in that sort of L5, S1, L4, L5 region. And so then you get all this flexion forced with the upper body weight all down into that lower lumbar. So I don't particularly think that's healthy for everybody. And so if you do want to flex the spine, then flex the spine. Find that flexion of the spine. But that's not the target area in this. I'm more looking for the backs of the legs, and then I get into the back of the spine later on anyway. And so again, for this, soles of feet around about parallel, hands down on top of the bolster like so, and then trying to keep the lumbar spine a little bit more towards neutral. So I'm not trying to turn the sit bones up, I'm just trying to keep that spine a little bit more supported so we don't have all the body's weight pressing down. Now, if you do have yourself supported to a fairly sufficient degree, then what you'll notice is that your belly just kind of drops down a little bit anyway. And then again, like I said, if you are really set on coming forward, then I would encourage flexion. So front ribs in, actually round that spine. So drawing those front ribs in and dropping the head down. Now the good thing is that to get sensation in the hamstring, it doesn't really matter if your spine's in flexion or extension. It matters where the sit bone is. And yes, extension and flexion will move the sit bone up and down, but it's cool. Once you're in full flexion, you can still take the sit bone back, still maintaining that same alignment of the spine all the way, and that sit bone's now moving all the way back, which feels very different than just hinging at my hips and just loading it all up down into the lumbar spine down in there. So the sensation we're really looking for is you might get a little bit through your gastroc, maybe a little bit in your calcaneal tendon and your Achilles, but it's going to be more up through the center of that hamstring, the biceps femoris, and coming up towards you into your sit bones. So that's pretty much the target area. And the biceps femoris is your bladder channel, and on the inside is your semimembranosus, semitendinosus, and that's going to be more your kidney pathway. Now, variations in this pose, realistically, just keep stacking people up. So bolster like that works. You can place a block in between the bolster as well. And when all of this doesn't work, if people still have maybe sort of like pain in their back, or they really have a lot of restriction, they can't even support themselves safely like this, so they'll be kind of like, they'll look something like this. And in that case, for those people, I'll just get them to lie up against the wall. And so I'll generally get something to support them, maybe something underneath the lower back, like so, and something to try and help to find lordosis in the lower lumbar, and then just legs up the wall with that lordosis encouraged to help to find a bit of neutral spine. This is probably too big. I wouldn't put something this size in the lower back. It'd just be like a rolled up blanket or something like that in the lower lumbar, just to help to encourage neutral spine in the lower lumbar, and then legs up the wall. And depending on how close your hips are to the wall will depend on how much you target the backs of the legs realistically. Oh.